I'm Amelia, 24, female, and my family uninvited me from my own brother's graduation party because they didn't want me stealing his moment. It was a sentence that felt both shocking and entirely predictable, the culmination of 2 decades of being treated like a supporting character in the grand production of my younger brother's life. The call came on a Tuesday, a day that had until that moment been perfectly ordinary. I was in my small apartment, surrounded by stacks of research papers and the faint, sterile scent of the lab that always seemed to cling to my clothes. The phone buzzed, displaying my dad's name, and I answered with a smile, expecting to finalize my travel plans. "Hey, Dad, just about to book my train ticket for next weekend," I said, my voice bright. A pause stretched across the line, thick with an uncomfortable static. "Emilia," he began, and the tone was all I needed to know something was wrong. It was his board meeting voice, the one he used for delivering news that was non-negotiable and in his mind purely logical. "Your mother and I have been talking, and we've made a small change of plans regarding Ethan's party." I waited, my fingers tightening around the pen I was holding. "Okay." We think it would be better if you didn't come to the party itself," he said, the words coming out in a businesslike rush. "You can still come for the graduation ceremony, of course. We'd love to see you there. But the party is really about celebrating Ethan, and we just don't want any distractions." I was silent, trying to process the sheer absurdity of his statement. Distractions, what could that possibly mean? "A distraction? Dad, what are you talking about? I'm his sister." He sighed, a sound of weary impatience I knew all too well. "Emilia, you know how you can be. You get into these complicated conversations about your work and people get fascinated. It's Ethan's day. All the focus should be on him, on his business degree, on his future. We didn't want you stealing his moment." Stealing his moment? The phrase echoed in the sudden, ringing silence of my apartment. It wasn't just an excuse, it was an accusation. It implied that my very presence, my existence, was a threat to my brother's happiness. It was the entire dynamic of our family distilled into 5 brutal words. This wasn't new, of course. The script had been written long ago. The golden child, Ethan, and me, the quiet, vaguely strange older sister. My parents, Robert and Susan, were practical people. My father, an accountant, saw the world in spreadsheets and bottom lines. My mother, a school administrator, valued clear, demonstrable achievements and social graces. Ethan fit their mold perfectly. He was charming, athletic, and pursuing a business degree, a path they understood and could brag about to their friends. I, on the other hand, was an anomaly. I was quiet, bookish, and had fallen in love with the intricate world of cellular biology. My passion was biomedical research, a field of abstract concepts and long-term goals that made their eyes glaze over. They couldn't quantify it, couldn't easily explain it at dinner parties, so they mostly ignored it. I remember my high school graduation. I had been named class valedictorian. It was a significant honor, one I had worked tirelessly for. The night of the ceremony, after I'd given my speech, my parents seemed almost inconvenienced by the teachers and other parents who came up to congratulate me. Later, at the small family dinner they'd arranged, the conversation wasn't about my achievement or my future. It was about Ethan's recent victory in a regional tennis tournament. "That final set was a nail-biter, wasn't it, Ethan?" My dad had boomed, beaming at my brother across the table. "You really showed that kid from Northwood what you were made of." My mom chimed in. Everyone was talking about it. Mrs. Gable said she's never seen a sophomore play with such confidence. I sat there, my valedictorian medal feeling like a cheap trinket in my pocket, and pushed a piece of cake around my plate. When I tried to mention something one of my teachers had said about a scholarship opportunity, my mother just patted my hand and said, "That's nice, dear. Ethan, did you tell your sister about the summer tennis camp?" The subject was changed, the spotlight swiveled back to its default position, and my moment, my small, hard-won moment, evaporated under the heat of my brother's constant sun. Another time, a year or so later, I won a prestigious university grant for a summer research program. It was a competitive national grant that came with a significant stipend and the chance to work in a top-tier laboratory. I called my parents, my voice trembling with excitement. After I explained what it was, my dad's first question was, "So you'll be making money? Is it more than Ethan makes at his internship at the firm?" The pride in my accomplishment was immediate. Ely converted into a number on a spreadsheet, a value to be compared against my brother's. When he learned the stipend was modest, meant to cover living expenses, his interest waned. That summer, they drove 3 hours to visit Ethan and watch him give a 10-minute presentation to a room of middle managers at his corporate internship. They posted a dozen photos on social media, gushing about their son, the future CEO. They never once visited me at my lab, just an hour from their home. They never asked to see the complex cellular models I was building, work that felt more meaningful to me than anything I had ever done. It was too complicated, too strange. And it was Ethan. So when my father uttered those words, "We didn't want you stealing his moment," it was just the latest and most explicit confirmation of my role. I was the shadow, the footnote, the distraction. And in that moment, something inside me didn't break, but rather hardened. The years of quiet hurt and simmering frustration cooled into a sudden calm clarity. The endless, desperate hope that one day they would see me, truly see me, finally died, and I was grateful for its passing. And it left a clean, quiet space in its wake. I took a slow breath, the air feeling sharp and clean in my lungs. I looked around my apartment at the evidence of a life they had no interest in understanding, the whiteboard covered in genetic sequences, the textbooks with broken spines, the photo of me and my cousin Chloe, the only one who ever asked about my work with genuine curiosity. This was my life. It was real, it was important, and it was mine. I didn't need their validation to make it so. My father was still waiting on the other end of the line, probably expecting tears or an argument. He probably had a list of logical rebuttals prepared, but I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. The game was over, and I was simply setting my pieces down and walking away from the board. I smiled, a real, genuine smile that he couldn't see. "Okay, Dad," I said, my voice even and light. "I understand." I could hear his surprise. "Oh, good, I'm glad you're being so mature about this." "Of course," I continued, the smile widening in my voice. "In that case, don't expect an invite to mine." The silence that followed was different. It wasn't static-filled or awkward, it was hollow, stunned. "Invite to what?" he asked, his voice losing its corporate polish. "Your graduation, Emilia, that's not for another 2 years at least. What are you talking about?" But I didn't answer, I just kept smiling at the wall at the future. "I have to go, Dad, I have work to do. Say congratulations to Ethan for me." And without waiting for a reply, I ended the call. I placed the phone gently on the table and stood there for a long moment, the silence of the room a comforting blanket. I felt no anger, no sadness, just a profound and unshakable sense of release. They had drawn a line, and I was finally, gratefully stepping over it. The silence after the call was deafening, but not in a painful way. It was the kind of quiet you experience after a loud, droning machine is finally switched off. For my entire life, that machine had been the constant hum of my family's expectations and the narrative they had built around us. Ethan was the sun, I was a distant planet, occasionally acknowledged but never truly seen. My father's words hadn't created the dynamic, they had simply held a microphone up to it, broadcasting the truth in undeniable terms. My hands were perfectly steady as I picked my phone back up. I didn't feel the need to cry or rage. The emotion that washed over me was a cold, clear resolve. For years, I had been playing a game with rules I could never win because the game itself was rigged. I was judged by a rubric that only valued what my brother was, not what I was. My achievements were measured in a currency I didn't possess, and now I was done. I was done trying to exchange my hard-earned accomplishments for their foreign currency of approval. My father's phrase, "stealing his moment," kept replaying in my mind, but its power to hurt was fading, replaced by a dark, analytical curiosity. Did they truly believe that? Did they imagine me standing in the corner of Ethan's party, trapping guests in lectures about mitochondrial DNA until they forgot to congratulate the man of the hour? The image was so preposterous it was almost funny. The truth was, I was an introvert. At family gatherings, I was the one who listened, who asked other people questions to avoid talking about myself because I knew my passions were met with blank stares. The idea that I was some kind of charisma vampire, sucking the attention out of a room, was a fantasy they had invented to justify their favoritism. It was easier to cast me as a villain than to admit they simply didn't value me. My mother called about an hour later. Her approach was different from my father's blunt corporate style. Mom was a master of emotional manipulation, cloaked in the language of maternal concern. Emilia, sweetie, she began, her voice syrupy sweet. Your father told me he spoke with you. I just want to make sure you're not upset. I'm not upset, Mom, I said, my voice placid. I was sitting at my desk now, idly sketching a diagram of a cell membrane on a notepad. Oh, good, I was so worried. You know how your father can be so clumsy with his words. He didn't mean it the way it sounded. This was a classic tactic. Position Dad as the bumbling bad cop while she swooped in as the understanding peacemaker, all while upholding the original verdict. How did he mean it then? I asked, genuinely curious to hear the spins. Well, it's just, Ethan has worked so hard, you know? This business degree was a real challenge for him, and we're just so incredibly proud. The party is for our friends, for his mentors. It's a networking opportunity. And well, you know, your subjects are a bit intense for a party atmosphere. My subjects, I repeated slowly. You mean my career, my life's work. Don't be so dramatic, dear, she chided gently. We just want one day where everything is simple and celebratory. For Ethan, you understand, don't you? You're the older sister, you should want what's best for him. There it was, the final piece of the puzzle. It wasn't just about protecting Ethan's moment. It was my duty as the older sister to sacrifice my own feelings for his benefit. My role was to be the eternally understanding, perpetually supportive figure in the background. My own needs, my own moments were secondary. It was in that moment that my quiet vow solidified. The vague idea that had formed after my dad's call now took shape, sharp and defined. My retort to him, then don't expect an invite to mine, had been an impulse, a flash of defiance. Now it became a plan. I wasn't going to have some petty retaliatory party. I wasn't going to graduate with my doctorate in 2 years and uninvite them from that ceremony. That was too far away, too abstract. I was going to do something else. I was going to take the one thing that was entirely mine, the world they dismissed as intense and complicated, and I was going to make it my fortress. Unbeknownst to them, I was on the cusp of the biggest achievement of my life, an achievement that had nothing to do with a university-sanctioned graduation ceremony. It was bigger. It was a secret I had been holding close to my chest for weeks, unsure of how or when to share it because I knew they wouldn't understand its magnitude. Now I knew I wouldn't be sharing it with them at all. I understand perfectly, Mom, I said, and the calmness in my voice seemed to unnerve her. You do. Yes, you've made your priorities very clear. I won't be a distraction. I'll see you at the ceremony. I have to go now. I hung up before she could reply. I leaned back in my chair and stared at my whiteboard. It was covered in a web of equations and biological pathways that represented 3 years of relentless work. To my parents, it was meaningless scribbles. To me, it was a beautiful, elegant story about how a specific protein could be targeted to halt the progression of a neurodegenerative disease. It was my story. And a few weeks ago, I had submitted this story to the Atherton Foundation, one of the most prestigious international bodies in biomedical science. I had applied for their Innovators Prize, a long-shot application I had filled out on a whim, encouraged by my faculty advisor. I never expected to hear back, but I had. An email had arrived a month ago informing me that I was a finalist. Then just 1 week before this fateful phone call, a second confidential email had arrived. I had won the Atherton Foundation Innovators Prize. It came with a substantial grant for future research and an awards gala in a beautiful historic hall in a city several states away. The ceremony was in 2 months. It was my graduation, my real one. It was the culmination of everything I had poured my heart and mind into. It was the moment I would be recognized not by my family, but by a global community of my peers, by people who understood the language I spoke. My quiet vow was simple. They would not be a part of it. I would not tell them. I would not give them the chance to diminish it, to compare it to Ethan's tennis trophy, to ask if it paid well. This moment would be mine and mine alone. I would share it only with those who saw me. I picked up my phone and sent a text to the one person I knew would understand. My cousin Chloe. Hey, are you free to talk? I have some news. She responded almost instantly. For you, always, everything okay? Everything is perfect, I typed back, a slow smile spreading across my face. Better than perfect. And by the way, how do you feel about getting dressed up and going to a very fancy party in a couple of months? I wasn't just closing a door on my family's Sue. Suffocating expectations. I was opening a new one into a future where my worth wasn't up for debate, and I would walk through it on my own terms. The game had changed because I was finally writing my own rules. My lab was my sanctuary. It was a place of controlled quiet, punctuated by the rhythmic hum of ventilation hoods and the gentle whirring of centrifuges. While my parents imagined a life of glamour and clear-cut victories for Ethan in the corporate world, my world was one of painstaking patience and incremental progress. It was a world they couldn't see and had never tried to. My research focused on a very specific, very stubborn protein cluster implicated in early-onset dementia. For 3 years, I had lived and breathed this research. My days were a cycle of preparing cell cultures, running complex simulations on a supercomputer, and then spending hours hunched over a microscope searching for minute changes that no one else would ever notice. There were no cheering crowds here. There were no flashy presentations to middle managers. Success was a barely perceptible shift in a data trend line, a single cell that responded to a compound as predicted. Failure was the norm, a contaminated sample, a flawed hypothesis, a week's worth of work lost to a simple miscalculation. To my parents, this was my hobby. They saw it as an extension of my nerdy high school science fair projects. When I'd try to explain the potential impact of my work, how it could one day lead to treatments that could give people more years with their loved ones, more years of clarity, my father would nod, his eyes distant, and say something like, "Well, that's nice, dear. Just make sure you're contributing to your retirement fund." My mother would offer a tight, polite smile and change the subject to something more palatable, like Ethan's upcoming golf tournament. They didn't understand the rigor, the discipline, the sheer intellectual force required to do what I did. They didn't understand that the lab was my corner office, my boardroom, my arena, and they certainly didn't understand the significance of the Atherton Foundation. The email confirming I had won the Innovators Prize had felt unreal. I read it 5 times, my heart pounding against my ribs. It wasn't just an award, it was a key. It was validation from the giants of my field, the very people whose papers I had studied until the pages were worn thin. It came with a $250,000 grant to continue my research, an amount of money that would allow me a level of independence I had only dreamed of. And it came with an invitation to the gala, a black tie event that was the scientific community's equivalent of the Oscars. After the phone calls with my parents, that email became my shield. Their dismissal of me felt like a distant echo from a world I no longer fully inhabited. They thought they were punishing me, exiling me from a backyard barbecue with potato salad and awkward small talk. They had no idea I was about to walk into a grand ballroom to be honored for changing a small piece of the world. The cosmic irony was so thick I could taste it. My cousin Chloe came over that evening, a bottle of wine in her hand and a worried look on her face. Chloe was more of a sister to me than a cousin. Her parents, my aunt and uncle, were artists, and they had raised her with a deep appreciation for passion, no matter how unconventional. She was a graphic designer, and she understood what it meant to pour your soul into your work. "Okay, spill," she said, setting the wine on my coffee table, which was, as usual, covered in journals. "Your text was way too cheerful. That's your code for my family just drove me crazy, and I'm pretending it doesn't bother me." I laughed, a real unforced laugh. "You know me too well, but this time it's different. The crazy part happened, yes, but the cheerful part is actually real." I told her everything. I started with the phone call, quoting my father's words verbatim. "We didn't want you stealing his moment." Chloe's eyes widened, her expression shifting from concern to pure indignation. "He did not. Robert actually said that to you. Oh, I am going to have words with him." "Don't," I said, holding up a hand. "Please, it doesn't matter anymore, that's the good part. It's like the final straw just snapped a chain I didn't even realize I was dragging around. I'm free, Chloe. She searched my face, looking for any sign of hidden pain. Seeing only resolve, she slowly nodded. Okay, I trust you, but that is still the crudest, most unbelievably selfish thing I have ever heard. I agree, I said with a shrug. And that's why they no longer get to be part of my story, which brings me to my news. I went to my laptop and pulled up the email from the Atherton Foundation. It was marked confidential, but Chloe was an extension of myself. I turned the screen towards her. She leaned in, her eyes scanning the text. She read the first paragraph, then looked at me, her jaw slightly agape. She read it again, more slowly this time, her finger tracing the words on the screen as if to confirm they were real. The Atherton Innovators Prize, she whispered, her voice full of awe. Emilia, is this what I think it is? The big one, the one Professor Davies always talked about. I nodded, unable to suppress my grin, the very same. Chloe let out a whoop of pure joy that was so loud I was sure my downstairs neighbor would complain. She launched herself off the couch and threw her arms around me, squeezing me tight. Emilia, oh my gosh, this is incredible. This is more than incredible. This is monumental. $250,000 grant, a gala? Why didn't you tell me sooner? I was still processing it, I admitted. And honestly, I was trying to figure out how to tell Mom and Dad. I knew they wouldn't get it. Chloe pulled back, her expression turning serious. Oh, and now? And now, I said, my voice firm, they don't get to know, not until it's over. This one is for me, and for you if you'll be my plus one. Her eyes lit up. Are you kidding me? A black tie gala? A chance to see Aunt Susan's face when she finds out she missed it? I wouldn't miss this for the world. We have to get you a dress. A killer dress. Something that says, I am a genius who is too busy revolutionizing medicine to attend your sad little graduation party. We spent the rest of the evening celebrating. We drank the wine, ordered pizza, and for the first time, I let myself feel the full weight of my achievement without the looming shadow of my family's indifference. Talking to Chloe was like breathing fresh air after being in a stuffy room. She asked a million questions about my research, not the polite, surface-level questions my parents asked, but deep, insightful ones. She wanted to understand the why behind my work. She saw the passion, not the peculiarity. As she was leaving, she gave me another fierce hug. I am so proud of you, Emilia, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Not just for the award, but for this, for choosing yourself. They have no idea who you are, but the rest of the world is about to find out. After she left, I walked back to my whiteboard. I looked at the complex pathways, the elegant dance of molecules and proteins that I had choreographed. It was my art, my science, my soul, all rendered an erasable marker. My parents celebrated Ethan for climbing a corporate ladder they had helped build for him. I had built my own ladder, rung by painful rung in the dark, and it had taken me somewhere they couldn't even imagine. They thought they were leaving me behind in the shadows, but all they had really done was give me the space to finally step into my own light. The 2 months between the phone calls and the Atherton Gala were a strange sort of limbo. Life with my family continued, but on a different plane of existence. I upheld my end of the bargain and attended Ethan's graduation ceremony. I sat between my beaming parents in the university auditorium, a polite, placid smile fixed on my face. When Ethan's name was called, they erupted. My father's booming cheer echoed in the hall, and my mother was on her feet, clapping so hard her hands must have been sore. I clapped too, a measured, gentle applause. I felt a profound sense of detachment, as if watching a movie about a family I vaguely knew. I was happy for Ethan in a distant sort of way. His happiness was real, his achievement was earned, and he deserved to be celebrated. The issue had never been with his success, but with the way my family used it as a cudgel to beat down my own. After the ceremony, there was a flurry of hugs and photos on the lawn. My parents enveloped Ethan in a group hug, a tight circle of impenetrable pride. I stood a few feet away, holding the ridiculously large bouquet of flowers they had pre-ordered for him. Emilia, get in the picture, my mother called, beckoning me over. I stepped into the frame, smiling on cue. In the photo, I'm sure it looks like a happy family, but I knew the truth. I was an accessory, a prop brought in to complete the image of familial perfection. As soon as the camera was down, my father was already steering Ethan away towards one of his professors. Ethan, you have to introduce us to Dean Albright. I was left standing with my mother. Well, wasn't that just wonderful? She sighed, dabbing a happy tear from her eye. He's really going places, that boy. He is, I agreed. It was a lovely ceremony. There was an awkward beat of silence. So, she said, her voice shifting to a more practical tone, you'll just head home from here then? Your father and I are taking Ethan and a few of his friends to a celebratory lunch before the party preparations begin. It wasn't a question, it was a dismissal. Yes, that's the plan, I said, my voice betraying no emotion. I have work I need to get back to anyway. Oh, right, your project, she said her tone laced with that familiar, faint condescension. Well, drive safe, sweetie. She gave me a quick air kiss near my cheek and then bustled off to join the men. I watched them go, a tight-knit unit of mutual admiration. I didn't feel hurt. I felt nothing at all. I walked to my car, placed the graduation program on the passenger seat, and drove the hour back to my apartment, the windows down and the music turned up loud. I did not go to the lab. Instead, I went online and ordered the most beautiful pair of shoes I had ever seen to go with the dress Chloe and I had picked out. The following week, my social media feeds were flooded with pictures from the party. It was an elaborate affair in my parents' meticulously landscaped backyard. There were caterers, a string quartet, and a massive banner that read, "Congratulations, Ethan, the world is yours." Everyone was there, aunts, uncles, cousins, family, friends, all people who had known me my entire life. In picture after picture, they were smiling, raising glasses, and posing with Ethan. He looked like a king on his coronation day. My parents looked like the proudest regents in the kingdom. I scrolled through the photos, not with envy, but with a growing sense of validation for my decision. This was their world, this was what they valued, and I was not in it. They had successfully erased me from the narrative of that day just as they had planned. Seeing the visual proof was strangely liberating. It wasn't my rejection of them that had come first, it was their rejection of me. I was simply accepting the terms they had laid out. My cousin Chloe called me after seeing the photo album my mom posted online. I am seeing red, she fumed through the phone. A string quartet? They got a string quartet for a business degree, and they gave you a "that's nice, dear" for curing diseases? The injustice is staggering. It's okay, Chloe, I reassured her, swirling a glass of iced tea as I sat on my balcony. It's just more proof that we're doing the right thing. This just isn't my world. Let them have it. Fine, but our world is going to be way better, she declared. The gala is going to make this look like a child's birthday party. Have you thought about what you're going to say, your speech? I hadn't. The idea of public speaking was terrifying, but the thought of this particular speech was different. It wouldn't be for my parents or their friends. It would be for a room full of people who understood. I've been thinking about it, I said. I'm not going to talk about the science in a technical way. I'm going to talk about the hope behind it, about what it means to search for answers in the dark. That's perfect, Chloe said softly. That's just perfect. In the weeks leading up to the gala, I threw myself into my work with a renewed sense of purpose. The grant money from the Atherton Foundation had already been transferred to the university, and with it came a new level of respect from the faculty. My advisor, who had always been supportive, now treated me as a colleague. I was given access to new equipment and a small team of undergraduate assistants. For the first time, I felt like a principal investigator, a leader of my own small scientific expedition. The contrast between my two worlds was stark. At the lab, I was Dr. Amelia Hale, or soon to be, a respected innovator. At home, I was just Amelia, Ethan's quiet older sister who did something complicated with microscopes. My parents and I fell into a pattern of benign neglect. We had brief weekly phone calls that were exercises in triviality. They would ask if I was eating enough, and I would ask about their garden. They would talk at length about Ethan's new job at a prestigious firm, the fancy apartment he was renting, and the corporate league softball team he had joined. They never once asked about the project I had mentioned on the day of his graduation. It was as if they had a tacit agreement not to venture into territory they found uncomfortable or uninteresting. They had successfully edited me down to a manageable, non-threatening version of their daughter, and they seemed content with that. I let them every superficial conversation, every glossed over detail about my life was another brick in the wall I was building. A wall that would protect my moment, my achievement from their casual dismissal. They thought they were in control, setting the terms of our relationship. They had no idea that I was the one holding all the cards, quietly waiting for the right time to play my hand. The party I had been barred from was a fading memory. The one I was headed to was my entire future. The day of the Atherton Foundation Gala arrived on a current of nervous, buzzing energy. Chloe had taken the day off from her job, and she showed up at my apartment in the morning with a professional makeup kit and a determined look in her eye. No daughter of my aunt is going to accept a major international scion. "The award with drugstore mascara," she announced, shooing me into a chair. "Tonight you are not just a genius, you are a glamorous genius." For 2 hours, she worked on me with the focus of an artist, transforming my usually bare face into something polished and elegant. As she worked, we talked and laughed, the easy, familiar rhythm of our friendship soothing my frayed nerves. We weren't just getting ready for a party. We were preparing for battle, arming ourselves with confidence and waterproof eyeliner. Then came the dress. We had spent weeks searching for it. It was a deep emerald green, the color of new life and old money. It was a simple, classic cut that flowed when I walked, with a neckline that was sophisticated and bold. When I put it on, I felt like a different person. I looked in the mirror and saw not just Amelia, the quiet researcher, but Dr. Hale, a woman who belonged in a room full of brilliant minds. "Okay," Chloe said, taking a step back and looking me up and down. Her eyes were shining. "Ethan, who, you look like you own the place, and you kind of do." Our flight was short, and we checked into a boutique hotel near the historic venue where the gala was being held. The air in the city felt different, charged with importance. As we rode the elevator up to our room, I clutched the small, elegant box that held my speech. I had rewritten it a dozen times, wanting every word to be perfect. The venue itself was breathtaking. It was a grand, turn-of-the-century hall with soaring marble columns, intricate gold leaf ceilings, and crystal chandeliers that cast a warm, glittering light over everything. The room was filled with the low hum of conversation as some of the world's most distinguished scientists mingled, sipping champagne and talking about everything from quantum physics to marine biology. For a moment, I felt a surge of imposter syndrome. What was I, a 24-year-old who still ate cereal for dinner, doing here? But then I saw my own face on a screen near the entrance, part of a rotating slideshow of the night's honorees. Amelia Hale, 2025 Atherton Innovators Prize for groundbreaking research in neurodegenerative protein targeting. Seeing it there in black and white solidified my right to be in that room. I had earned this. Every lonely night in the lab, every failed experiment, every moment of self-doubt had been a step on the path that led me here. "Look at you," Chloe whispered, squeezing my arm. "You're a rock star." We found our assigned table near the front of the stage. I was seated with the other major prize winners, a brilliant astrophysicist from Japan, a Nobel laureate in chemistry who was receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award, and a compassionate humanitarian from Kenya. They were warm, humble, and fascinating. They treated me not as a junior, but as a peer. They asked about my research with genuine, penetrating interest. For the first time in my life, I talked about my work to a group of strangers and saw nothing but understanding and respect in their eyes. There was no glazed-over boredom, no polite redirection of the conversation. Here, my intense subjects were the main event. The dinner was exquisite, the speeches were inspiring, and the entire evening felt like a beautiful dream. When the time came for the Innovators Prize to be presented, my heart began to hammer against my ribs. The president of the Atherton Foundation, a formidable and deeply respected scientist named Dr. Eris Thorne, walked to the podium. "The Innovators Prize," he began, his voice echoing through the silent hall, "is awarded to a young researcher whose work demonstrates not only immense skill, but immense courage. It is for those who dare to ask the questions no one else is asking and who pursue the answers with relentless dedication. This year's recipient, Ms. Amelia Hale, has done just that." He went on to describe my research, but he didn't use jargon or overly technical terms. He spoke of it in the way I always had in my own heart, as a quest for hope. He spoke of families affected by dementia, of the race against time, and of the elegant, brilliant solution my work proposed. He made my quiet, lonely research sound like the most important adventure in the world. Her work is a testament to the power of a single, focused mind to illuminate the darkness. It is with immense pride that I present the 2025 Innovators Prize to Amelia Hale. The room erupted in applause. It was a wave of sound that washed over me, warm and real. Chloe was gripping my hand under the table, tears streaming down her face. I stood up on wobbly legs and made my way to the stage. Dr. Thorne shook my hand firmly and handed me the award, a heavy, beautifully sculpted glass spiral. I turned to the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, and took a deep breath. In the front row, a photographer raised his camera. Behind me was a massive screen, a banner with the foundation's logo and my name in bold, elegant letters. Emilia Hale. Thank you, Dr. Thorne, I began, my voice steadier than I expected. Thank you to the Atherton Foundation. To be standing here is the honor of a lifetime. I looked down at my notes, but then I looked back up at the crowd. I wasn't going to read the speech. I was just going to talk. For a long time, I said, I worked in what felt like silence. Science, especially research, can be a quiet, lonely pursuit. You spend years searching for a single, elusive answer in the dark. There are no guarantees of success, but you keep going because you have to believe that what you're searching for matters. You have to believe that even if you never find the answer yourself, you might clear a little bit of the path for the person who comes after you. I paused, thinking of my family. Sometimes the world outside the lab doesn't understand that search. It's not always glamorous. It doesn't always have a clear, immediate result you can celebrate at a party. But the search itself is its own reward. The belief in a better future is what drives us. This award is not just for me, I concluded, my voice thick with emotion. It's for every young scientist who has ever been told their passion is too complicated or too quiet or not as important as something else. Your work matters, your search matters, keep going, thank you. The applause was even louder this time. It was a standing ovation. As I walked off the stage, my heart felt so full it might burst. Chloe met me at the steps, throwing her arms around me. That was amazing, she sobbed happily. You were amazing. Later, during the reception, Chloe pulled me aside. She was beaming, holding up her phone. The official photographer just sent me a few shots. I hope you don't mind, I posted one. The world needs to see this. She showed me the picture. It was a perfect shot. I was on stage, holding the award, looking out at the audience with a small, confident smile. Behind me, the banner with my name was crystal clear. Chloe had written a simple, powerful caption. This is what a genius looks like. So unbelievably proud of my cousin Amelia Hale for winning the Atherton Innovators Prize tonight, changing the world one cell at a time. Atherton Gala Women in STEM proud cousin. It's perfect, Chloe, I said, giving her a hug. Thank you for being here. This wouldn't have been the same without you. I had my moment. It wasn't stolen from anyone. It was earned. And I had shared it with someone who truly saw me. I had no idea that a single photograph posted with love and pride was about to detonate the quiet, carefully constructed world my parents lived in. But in that moment, I didn't care. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The day after the gala was a blissful, dreamlike haze. Chloe and I slept in late, ordered an extravagant room service breakfast, and rehashed every detail of the previous night. We scrolled through the official event photos and the posts from other attendees. My name was being mentioned by some of the most respected figures in my field. It was surreal and wonderful. My phone buzzed occasionally with congratulatory emails from professors and colleagues who had seen the news, but my family's corner of the world remained blissfully silent. They were completely, totally oblivious. We flew home that evening, and as I unlocked the door to my quiet apartment, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. The heavy weight of seeking their approval was gone, replaced by the solid, grounding knowledge of my own achievement. The beautiful glass award from the foundation now sat on my mantelpiece, catching the light. It was a tangible symbol of my new reality. The first ripple appeared 2 days later. It started with Chloe. She called me, her voice a strange mix of excitement and apprehension. She said, "You're not going to believe this. My post, it's kind of going viral, at least in our hometown." "What do you mean?" I asked, sinking into my desk chair. "Well, some of my old high school friends from home saw it and shared it, and then their parents shared it. You know Mrs. Gable, your mom's friend from the school board? She shared it with the caption, 'Our town has a hidden genius.' It has like 200 likes." A cold knot began to form in my stomach. Oh. Yeah, it's making the rounds in the exact circle of people your parents talk to every single day. There is a 0% chance they haven't seen it yet. I was strangely calm. It was happening, the inevitable collision of my two worlds. Okay, well, nothing I can do about that now. "Are you sure you're okay?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "I'm sure," I said, and I meant it. I was prepared. Let the chips fall where they may. The chips, it turned out, did not fall. They were launched from a catapult. The first call from my mother came an hour later. I looked at the screen, saw her name, and let it go to voicemail. Then came a T. XD Amelia, call me now. The capital letters vibrated with panic. Then my father called. I ignored that too. Another text, this time from him. "Your mother is very upset. We need to talk to you immediately." The calls and texts started escalating, a frantic, desperate barrage. Missed call, text, missed call. It was a level of urgency I had never received from them in my entire life, not even when I had pneumonia in college. I turned my phone on silent and placed it face down on the counter. I made myself a cup of tea and sat with the quiet hum of my refrigerator, letting the storm rage somewhere outside my peaceful apartment. I didn't know the full story of what was happening in their house until Chloe called me back later that evening, her voice a hushed, conspiratorial whisper. "Okay, I have intel," she said. "From my mom, she got a hysterical call from Aunt Susan." I braced myself. How bad is it? "It's a full-scale meltdown. Apparently, they didn't see my post. They were completely in the dark until about 5 o'clock this evening. They were sitting in the living room, watching the local evening news." I could already picture the scene. My father in his recliner, my mother on the sofa with her knitting. "And then," Chloe continued, her voice filled with grim satisfaction, "the final segment came on. It's the one they do every Friday, Hometown Heroes. And guess who this week's hero was?" My breath caught in my throat. "No." "Yes," she said. "The local news station picked up the story. They had a picture of you from the gala, the one I posted. They had a file photo of you from your high school graduation. They interviewed your old principal, who gushed about you being the most brilliant student he'd ever had. They even talked to a professor at the university. It was a full 5-minute segment about the local girl who just won one of the most prestigious science awards in the world. They talked about the research, the $250,000 grant, everything." I closed my eyes, imagining my parents' faces as they watched the television screen, as they heard about my life, my achievements, from a news anchor instead of from me. "According to my mom," Chloe went on, "Aunt Susan just stared at the screen, her face getting paler and paler. Dad apparently just kept saying, 'What is the Atherton Foundation? I don't understand.' And then they showed the clip of your speech. The part where you said, 'Sometimes the world outside the lab doesn't understand that search. It's not always glamorous. It doesn't always have a clear, immediate result you can celebrate at a party.'" The words hung in the air between us. My quiet coded message to myself had been broadcast to the entire city and directly into my parents' living room. When the segment ended, Chloe said softly, Aunt Susan just collapsed. Not a faint, but just crumpled into a heap on the floor, sobbing, full-on, gut-wrenching, world-ending sobs. That's when she called my mom, crying so hard she could barely speak, asking why you would hide this from them, how they could have missed it. I felt a pang, not of guilt, but of a strange, sorrowful pity. My mother's tears weren't for me, not really. They were for herself. They were the tears of a woman who had just been confronted with the undeniable truth of her own neglect. She had been so busy curating the perfect story about her perfect son that she had missed the blockbuster epic happening right under her nose. The news segment hadn't just informed them, it had judged them. It had held up a mirror to their choices, and the reflection was unbearable. My phone started buzzing again, a text from Ethan this time. Mom is a wreck, Dad is losing it, what is going on? Call them. Even now, their first instinct was to command, not to ask. They weren't asking if I was okay. They weren't congratulating me. They were demanding that I manage their feelings, that I rush in to soothe the crisis that they had created. I let out a long, slow breath. The storm had made landfall, and for the first time I felt ready to face the wreckage, but I would do it tomorrow. Tonight I would enjoy the quiet, I had earned it. The next morning, I woke up feeling clear-headed and resolved. The barrage of texts and missed calls had tapered off overnight, leaving a digital silence that felt heavy with anticipation. They had tried their usual tactics, panic, demands, and deploying Ethan as a messenger, and when none of it worked, they had retreated, leaving the next move to me. I made myself coffee and sat by the window, watching the city wake up. I looked at the Atherton Award on my mantelpiece, its elegant glass spiral a symbol of a world they knew nothing about. It was my world. The thought gave me strength. After a second cup of coffee, I picked up my phone and dialed my father's number. He answered on the first ring. Amelia, his voice was a raw, frayed thing I had never heard before. The usual. Booming confidence was gone, replaced by a weary, hollowed-out tone. Hi, Dad, I said calmly. Your mother, we've been so worried. I'm fine, Dad, I said, keeping my voice even. I saw you called. You saw we called, he sputtered, a flash of his old self returning. Amelia, we've been trying to reach you for almost a full day. The news, your mother, why wouldn't you tell us something like this? An award, a gala? He said the word gala as if it were a foreign object he couldn't quite identify. Why would I have told you? I asked, the question genuine. I wasn't being accusatory, I was simply stating the logical conclusion of their own actions. The last time we spoke about a celebration, you told me my presence would be a distraction and that I had a tendency to steal the moment. I simply took you at your word. I decided to have my moment privately so as not to bother any of you. The silence on the other end of the line was thick with the weight of his own words being handed back to him. He had no defense. He had built the cage himself, and I had simply used the key he'd given me to lock the door behind me. It wasn't like that, he stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. That was about Ethan's party, that was different. Was it? I pressed, still calm, still quiet. Was it different from my valedictorian dinner, which was all about Ethan's tennis match? Was it different from when I won the university grant, and your only question was whether it paid more than Ethan's internship? Please, Dad, tell me how this time was different. I could hear his breathing, ragged and uneven. He had no answer. For the first time in my life, I had him cornered with simple, undeniable facts, and his usual bluster failed him. Let me speak to Mom, I said. There was a muffled sound, and then my mother's voice came on the line. It was small and fragile. Amelia. Hi, Mom. Oh, Amelia, she whispered, and then the dam broke. A wave of sobs came through the phone, the same gut-wrenching cries Chloe had described. We saw you on the television. You were so beautiful. You looked so important, and we didn't know. Why didn't you tell your own mother? Her pain was real, I could hear that, but it was a selfish pain. It was the agony of realizing the image she had of her life, of her family, was a lie. It was the horror of being exposed, not just to me, but to her friends, her community. The news segment hadn't just celebrated me, it had indicted them. I'm your daughter, she wept. We should have been there. Should you have? I asked gently. Would you have even wanted to be there? It was a room full of scientists talking about intense subjects. Remember, not exactly a simple, celebratory atmosphere. She flinched, her sob catching in her throat. I was using their own words, their own logic, and it was devastatingly effective. We made a mistake, she finally whispered, the words sounding like they were being torn from her. A terrible, terrible mistake. Your father and I, we just always understood Ethan's world better. It was easier, simpler, we didn't mean to push you away. But you did, I stated, not as an accusation, but as a fact. You didn't just push me away, Mom. You made it clear that my world, my passions, my achievements were of a lesser value than his. You weren't just neglectful, you were dismissive, and I'm not angry about it anymore. I just accept it. I've built a life for myself that you aren't a part of because you made it clear you didn't want to be. But we do, she cried, a new wave of desperation in her voice. We want to be a part of it now. We can change. We can do better. We're so proud of you, Emilia. So proud. The words I had longed to hear my entire life finally came, but they were a decade too late and prompted only by public shame. They rang hollow. They were a frantic attempt to repair their own image, to reclaim the daughter who had suddenly become a status symbol. I took a deep breath. I could have raged, I could have cried, I could have listed every single slight from the past 20 years. But what was the point? I didn't need to win a fight. I had already won the war just by building a life where their approval was irrelevant. All I needed now was peace. I hear you, Mom, I said, and my voice was soft but laced with a new kind of steel. But pride is not something you can just decide to feel when it's convenient. It's not a switch you can flip when the local news tells you to. It has to be earned. Respect has to be earned. I laid out my terms not as a threat, but as a blueprint for a possible future. If we are going to have a relationship moving forward, it will be on new ground. It will be one where you ask me about my work and actually listen to the answer. It will be one where my achievements are not compared to Ethan S. It will be one where I am not an accessory to his life, but the center of my own. Ray will be no more dismissals, no more "that's nice, dear." It will be a relationship of mutual respect, or it will be no relationship at all. The choice is yours. She was quiet, save for the sound of her own shaky breathing. I don't know what she had expected, a tearful reconciliation, perhaps, an easy forgiveness that would absolve her of her guilt. I offered none of it. I only offered a path, a difficult uphill path that required them to do the work they had avoided for my entire life. "We can," she finally choked out. "We'll try, we promise." "Okay," I said. "That's a start. I have to go now. I have work to do." I ended the call and placed the phone on the table. A profound sense of calm settled over me. The war was over. The reckoning was done. I hadn't won by shouting or seeking revenge. I had won by becoming myself so fully and unapologetically that they could no longer ignore me. The future of our family was uncertain. Perhaps they would change, perhaps they wouldn't, but for the first time it didn't matter. My happiness was no longer contingent on their approval. My worth was forged in the fire of my own lab, my own mind, my own hard-won success. I was free. I picked up my bags, locked my apartment door, and walked out into the bright morning, ready to get back to work, my work. So to anyone out there who has ever been made to feel like a supporting character in your own life, to anyone whose passions have been dismissed or whose light has been dimmed to let someone else shine brighter, your moment is not something that can be given to you or taken away by others. It is something you build piece by piece in the quiet, dedicated pursuit of who you are. Protect it, nurture it, and when it finally arrives, don't be afraid to stand in its light alone if you have to. The right people, the ones who truly see you, will be there to applaud.